So we start the 50s with the Chiron return. Now this is just such a monumental transit that even people who don't know much about astrology maybe have heard of this. It's almost like the Saturn return that we have at around 29. So the Chiron return happens at around 49 to 50 and it will go for around 2 years. You know, there's been so much happening in life up until around 50, and often we, depending on the life that we've lived, we might not have had a chance to go deep into our healing. And so this is a time that's really just for us. This is a time for us to go deeply within and look at what our core wound is, because Chiron represents our core wound. So this transit is about healing that. Now, there are many people that say that, you know, Chiron, the centaur, represents the wounded healer, the wound that cannot be healed. It's just something that we have to contend with and live with. And I tend to not agree with that. I tend to see that we absolutely can turn our core wound into a kind of mastery. And so when it comes to the Chiron return, the core wound is going to come up in all the ways that it hasn't yet been looked at, hasn't yet been dealt with. This can be a very challenging time. It can be, but it's a healing time. And if you don't put aside the time to go within during your Chiron return and you go into resistance, then I imagine it's going to be more challenging. Now, I work with people who are really wanting to be conscious about their healing. But I imagine if those people who maybe are not conscious, or they're still taking on too much of other people's stuff, then this is where those kind of fated kind of situations can come in and slap us around a little bit, and, you know, to put it bluntly, and so that we can kind of take a look at what's really going on. And so this is a time for us. It's a time for our personal healing. So if you've been a mother, working, had your own business, doing all the things for everyone else, maybe doing things for your family, you might still, you know, have those things going on, and there's still a lot of, you know, life in us, but there's going to be more zest and juice and life and vitality in us if we do this healing during these 2 years. So it's a really important 2 years to have a look at where is Chiron in your chart. And so if this hasn't happened for you yet, or if it's coming up soon, have a look at what house placement and the sign placement, and just have a look at, you know, what is that core wound, and start to contemplate a little bit. And then when that Chiron return starts to come in, if you're quite sensitive, you'll feel it as it's coming in. The orb I use for all of these, I might have said that in other videos, is around 3 degrees. But some people feel things around 5 degrees. So it depends on how sensitive you are. So 3 to 5 degrees, no more than that though. And while we've still got the Chiron return happening, we have the Saturn square Saturn and the a Nodal Square. So this is a really intense time between, you know, depending on when your Chiron return starts, anywhere from 49 to 50 to about 52 is really grueling. So let's just do the Saturn square first. So the Saturn square is a time when we need to really evaluate the structures that we're putting in place and our legacy that we're leaving. It's preparing us for some really, you know, making sure that we're meeting our purpose. So with the taking stock, it's a serious and honest evaluation of our lives, and what are we leaving? What are we attached to? What can we let go? You might feel some restriction and constriction here but the divine is just telling you need to be more patient. So this is a test of your patience. All Saturn transits really are. So the challenges between, say, 50 and 52 are not over, because while we're having our Chiron return and our Saturn square Saturn, then comes our nodal square. So this means that the nodes, the transiting nodes, will be square your natal nodes, and so this actually forms an energetic grand square in your chart. So this can feel like a whole lot of tension, like tension to heal, tension to create, tension to live your life on your terms. And the square is like a crossroads. So if you've been teetering between, you're sort of still in your south node, or you don't really know how to move into your north node, this is going to give you that opportunity to take stock of where you're at. What are you living your potential? Are you staying where you're comfortable? And how do you take what you've mastered in where you're comfortable and move that, evolve that into your mastery, into your potential for this life? Now, there are some thoughts, esoteric thoughts, that your north node sign is going to be your next sun sign in the next life. So you really want to develop these qualities, because in the next life, this is going to be the lens, your essence of which you live your life. So we really want to take this energy and you're not going to have it necessarily mastered by the end of your life, but you want to start to move into that potential. You don't have to leave your south node behind. You just have to evolve that and not stay there so comfortably. You can take all that you've learned, all that experience, all those talents and skills, and then evolve them into the polarity of the nodes. So when the nodal square happens, it's happening so that you're at a crossroad and you've got to choose. Do I stay comfortable, or do I start to take a risk? And I'm doing all this healing with my Chiron return, and maybe now it's time to reinvent myself, or maybe now it's time to live my life on my terms. Like I said earlier, live life my way, and dare I say it, be a bit more selfish. If you've been a mother or a father, or you've had children, and maybe it's time to be a bit more selfish. Now, I know that people are having children much later in life these days. So this can be really challenging, because if you've still got young children, you're going to have to try and balance this in your life. Otherwise, it's going to feel like quite the hurdle. So that between those first 3 years of our 50s, there is just so much intensity. So you can understand that if people are not being conscious of this time, that this opportunity for deep healing, for deep purpose, for moving more consciously into your Dharma, this could pass you by. And not only could it pass you by, there can be a lot of upheaval and chaos in your life. And, most people just think, okay, life is just being crazy. There's just this stuff happening to me. I've lost my job, or maybe I've got this illness, or something's happened, but it's like these fated experiences to try and wake us up. And yet some people, of course, because not everyone wakes up in the same lifetime, it passes them by. And so life can get more challenging. And unfortunately, this is the way natural law works. Natural law, divine law, it's not necessarily nurturing, but it is happening for us. Now we get to around 55, 56, and we have our third nodal return. Okay, so we've just had the nodal square, and then you take that into your nodal returns. Those decisions, hopefully you made a decision and you started moving towards your north node, or at least something started to evolve your south node capabilities and talents and all the mastery that you have there, and you started to use it for your higher purpose. Then at the nodal return, your third nodal return, this is when the nodes come back around to where they are in your birth chart. This is when you get a complete reset. You're being led, guided into your destiny. This is like, there's so much going on usually in your 30s and your 40s. We've got so many complex that we're dealing with that, by the time you get to your 50s, it's like you're coming into this greater potential of what you're here to do. You're here in service now. But before you can be here in service, you really have to do the inner work at your Chiron return, make that decision at your crossroads at your Nodal Square. You've also had to reevaluate everything at your Saturn Square Saturn, very serious time. And then you come into your third nodal return, and this is going to actually pave the way for the second Saturn return. So this is leading you to your destiny or your Dharma. If you consciously work with these transits all along your 50s, the 50s can become very fruitful. So the nodal return is where you've gotten the stuff from the south node, and you really want to apply that to your north node energy, or that potential, and you want to start to really develop that energy. And so you start to contemplate, what does that look like for me? How can I shift up that south node energy now? How can I really start to develop those qualities that are going to call me into my next life, and that are going to lead me into my next life, and that is going to, I'm purifying my south node so that I can be the best version of myself. So I love the nodal transits because, my whole thing is soul evolution, and so that's why these transits happen, is for our evolution. The problem arises when we're not conscious, self-aware, knowing how to do the work. So this is where evolutionary astrology and readings along these deep perspectives are so beneficial. Okay, and then last but not least, we have the second Saturn return. So this is so the second Saturn return happens at around 57 to 58. This is when we move into eldership. So this is where all of that wisdom that you've garnered and you've cultivated over the journey of your life, it's not like you've got no experience now. You want to bring all that experience and synthesize it into this embodiment. You should be more comfortable in your own skin, more comfortable with your place in the world, more comfortable with your legacy. And so this is just giving you an opportunity that if you still have some of those things to tie up, that you can become comfortable. You own your role in the world. You're allowed to take up space. And by now you've hopefully done enough of the healing so that you feel that you can take up space. And some people will step into roles of like mentorship or leaders. This is the elder, the wise person, the wise woman, the wise man. And it's also like for women, if they've gone through their menopause by this time, then they start to feel like that energy back into their physical body. Their vitality starts to come back as well. So this can be really an amazing time for women, especially if you've done the work needed throughout the rest of your 50s. Okay, so there's a couple of kind of cool transits in the 60s, and I'm going to make another video about that. But please, if this has been helpful to you, give it a like, subscribe, or share it to anybody who is moving through any of these transits, and hopefully it supports them as much as I hope it supported you.